Hello, welcome to today's Insta Live. It's so lovely to be able to speak to you today because it's Fertility Awareness Week, and today it's such an important topic because we're talking about mental health awareness, and so many people have problems with their mental health because of fertility. So I thought this would be a very powerful day to talk to you about my own fertility story. And this is actually quite a different Insta Live because usually I'm here telling you how to improve your health and your lifestyle, strategies to manage your emotions. And today is completely different, so there is absolutely no script or anything planned. I just wanted to share with you from the heart where my story began, because even though I am a nurse, I was a patient to begin with. Actually, I was diagnosed with infertility at a very young age. I was just 17 years old. So it took me so many years to cope with it that I really wanted to give back to this community and do the work that I'm actually doing right now. But today is all about sharing my story and how everything started. So I need to go back to too many years ago, actually almost 20 years ago, when I was just 17 and I was waiting for my periods to start. And I was in high school and I noticed that all my friends started their periods when they were 14, 15. My cousins had started their periods, they were my age, and I didn't have periods. And that was so odd to me. I just didn't know, why is it that I don't have a period yet? This is absolutely not normal to me. So I was waiting for my periods to start. I was a teenager. Everyone was talking about pads, tampons, period stuff, normal things that teenagers will talk about, and my periods hadn't started and I didn't know why. And I just felt so different. I knew that something was wrong with my body. I just didn't know what. I noticed that I started developing normally. I had breasts, I had a waist, all the normal changes that we go through in puberty and when we are teenagers, but I just didn't have periods. So, of course, my parents took me to the doctor several times. Probably the first time when I was 16, and the doctor said, well, just let it go, wait another year, because some girls just start a bit later. And that's what I did. I just waited another year. Then at 17, I finally went to the doctor again, and she was an endocrinologist. So she looked at my hormone levels, which seemed normal. And she said, well, maybe you're not ovulating because you are too skinny, so you need to put on weight. So I started eating more. I started on the pill to see if I could have a period in between. So after taking the pill for a few months and gaining some weight by eating more, I still didn't have periods. So this was really, really puzzling. And the endocrinologist decided to refer me to a private gynecologist. And that was the day when my life changed forever, and I was not prepared to cope with what happened that day. I think no one is. I think when we go to the gynecologist, my idea was that it was something normal that every woman does. I wasn't expecting it to hurt at all because I felt it's normal. It's just a normal appointment. They're just going to do a few checks. But so this was a private gynecologist, and my mom went to the gynecologist with me. And I remember it very well because she had my sister in her arms, and my sister was a baby by then because we are 15 years apart. So she was maybe about 1.5 years old, very tiny. And I remember being at the doctor's office, and the doctor asked, my mom asked me, do you want me to go into the doctor's office with you? And I said, no, just wait in the waiting area because I'm strong. I'm a grown-up. I was just 17. But I said, no, I'm a grown-up. I can deal with this on my own. This is just a normal appointment. Anyway, I go into these appointments and the doctor asks me a few questions. She asks me about my periods. I said I'd never had periods. Sometimes I did have cramps, monthly cramps, but I never had periods. But like I said, I had breasts, I had a waist, so everything externally looked normal. So she asked me if she could do an internal examination, a normal gynecological examination. And when the doctor attempted to do a normal gynecological examination, it was incredibly painful. Very, very painful. She tried a couple of times and I just could not cope with it. And I felt this is not normal. I wasn't expecting it to be painful. So she told me to get dressed and sit. And she said what I never thought I would hear in my life. She said, I think you don't have a uterus and I think you need surgery to reconstruct your vagina. And I think as a 17-year-old, I was just in complete shock. I was not expecting that at all. And the first words that came out of my mouth was, I want my mum. So my mum was outside, like I said, and she was holding my sister, who was a baby at that point. And she came into the room with the doctor and she sat down and the doctor said again, I think Andrea doesn't have a uterus and I think she needs surgery to reconstruct her vagina. And my mom was in shock, as you can imagine, it just as I was. I think in that moment is the moment when your life changes forever. There's the before the diagnosis and there's the after, and life after the diagnosis can never be the same again. So I remember what I asked the doctor was, so does that mean that I can't have babies? And the doctor said, no, I don't think you can have babies. And I kept asking the same question, so does that mean that I can't have babies? And, it's the same question as if I was in shock, that first stage of the cycle of grief, as if I was expecting for a different answer. And so we left that appointment completely in shock with a referral to the National Health Service because it was a rare case that the doctor, she was aware of it, but she hadn't seen many women like that. So I got referred to a specialist team. And I just remember that my mom and I, we walked for ages and we were crying in that walk. And it was just unbearable pain. Just going back to that moment, it always hits me. But I know we went to see my dad around lunchtime that day. And we had lunch. And of course we told him what was happening. I'm sorry. And my dad, I'm sure he was just as shocked. I know that he was. But my dad was always very strong. He was always the protector of the family. So all he said was, we will solve it. We will resolve it. So my dad was very, very strong, and he gave me the strength when I didn't have any strength. My dad was there. So from that moment on, it was just chasing lots of appointments. I remember I've been to the National Health Service where they wanted to do a gynecological examination again. And this was in Portugal, but I'm sure that here in UK it's very similar in terms of National Health Service. You are scheduled for an appointment with a specialist, but then you're actually seen by the junior doctor. I think this might have happened to everyone at this point if you've been to the National Health Service. So I was scheduled for this appointment, supposedly to be seen by this expert gynecologist. But after waiting for a long time, I go into this appointment room. There was no privacy at all in this room. It was really horrible. And he just tells me, undress and lay on the bed, legs up. And this junior doctor, again, he tries to do a gynecological examination and he can't. I'm in pain. He tries again and again, I'm in pain. Then he calls the specialist doctor, and the specialist doctor tries to examine me again, and he can't because I'm in unbearable pain at this point. They hadn't made a fixed diagnosis yet, but they didn't understand why they couldn't do a normal examination. The doctors were arguing with each other. They didn't know why it wasn't possible, and they decided to blame it on me. That I was so afraid that I was the reason why they weren't able to perform the examination. So it was my fear of having a gynecological examination and they said, well, the only way we can do this is if you are anesthetized, and then we'll be able to do it whilst you're asleep. And I said, that's fine, just do that. I just cannot bear with the pain anymore. So we scheduled this surgery where they put a camera inside my tummy and they did the examination, and that's when they realized that I was born without a uterus and I didn't have the top third of my vagina, and that's why when they were trying to do the gynecological examination it was so incredibly painful because I didn't have a full vagina and I didn't have a uterus. And they finally realized her pain was not psychological pain, her pain was not fear, it was actually pain because the organs aren't there. So I remember that I was in this gynecological ward, and I was 17 years old, and it's usually women who are much older who are having gynecological procedures. They were 40, 50, 60, and they were asking me, why are you in this ward? You're just a girl, you're so young. It's like, I don't know what's happening with my body. But at that point, I was discharged home with a fixed diagnosis of MRKH. And that means that it happens to 1 in 5,000 women, and we are born without the uterus and without the top of our vagina. That means that I'm never going to be able to carry my babies. Even though I have ovaries, so I can do surrogacy, but I'm never going to be able to carry my babies. And it also meant that I would have to have vaginal reconstruction if I wanted to have a normal sex life. So they gave me this diagnosis and they said, what we can resolve and solve is the size of your vagina. However, I don't know how to do that operation. I need to study, talk to some colleagues, and then I'll let you know. So a few months have gone by and he hasn't said anything to me. I rang him a couple of times. What are we going to do? What's the solution? And he never came back with an appropriate solution. And at that time, remember that the internet 20 years ago wasn't what it is right now. So there wasn't the same amount of information. There wasn't a lot. There wasn't Instagram, Facebook. There wasn't a lot of ways of connecting with other women who had been through this. I didn't know anyone. I thought I was alone. I was a freak. I was questioning, oh my God, am I a woman? What is my role in a relationship? Will anyone ever love me for me? Will I be able to get married? And what if I maybe never find someone with whom I can have this feeling of family? Because that's what I ultimately wanted. I wanted someone with whom I could have a family. For me, I had a very big family at that point. We're very close, very connected. We speak every day up to this day. So does that mean that I'm gonna grow by myself, get old and die alone? And also I was born a Catholic, and there was this idea that sex was to make babies. And I was like, so where does that sit? Where does my problem sit with this religion that I have been following for all these years? I was still trying to figure out who I was. I was so young, my values, my beliefs, I didn't know any of that. And I had all these questions in my head, and ultimately I wanted to be normal. And I felt I can't resolve the issue of my fertility, of not being able to carry my babies, but I can resolve the issue of being able to have sex, and I want to do that. I want to be as normal as possible. That's what I wanted at 17, which I think is understandable. So I found this doctor who was really amazing, and he had done some surgeries on women who had the same problem as me. So he had done 4 or 5, and then he had also done some surgeries in transsexuals who were swapping from women to men and men to women. So he had some experience with that. But ultimately, I think the reason why I chose this doctor was because I felt so connected with him. He was so empathic. And I had this big file with all my questions, and he took the time to answer all those questions. He took the time to explain why this method was better than that method. So I went ahead with having surgery with him. And I think that's so important. If you're thinking about choosing a clinical team, it needs to be someone you can connect with. So I connected with this doctor, and by that point I was myself a nurse in training. I was in my first year of university, and I had major surgery to reconstruct my vagina. They had to open me up, my tummy, and they've cut 20 centimeters of my small bowel, and they've prepped the bowel to remove the outer and the inner layer to just remain the muscle. And then they cut me open where my vagina should be to lengthen it, and then put that tissue of muscle in there to make it longer. And then they had to put a prosthesis, which is similar to a dildo. And I had to stay in hospital for 10 days, laying flat, waiting for that skin graft to stick to the vaginal wall. So for 10 days I was in this hospital, and it was good. I had my family always there, always very supportive. I remember I had another lady in front of me, and she was so funny. She was just telling jokes all the time and making me laugh. But then I also remember situations during those 10 days that were horrible. I remember one of the cleaning ladies who came to do my bed one day, and I was bleeding from my surgical wound. And she criticized me for being bleeding because she thought I was on my period. But of course I don't have periods. It was surgical bleeding. And I remember I was so sad for that. And I think so many times people talk and criticize other people without knowing where those people are or where they've been. So I think we need to be really, really careful about where others are coming from. So maybe just being a bit kind to other people. I think because 20 years on, I still remember that stupid comment. Anyway, so I was discharged from a hospital. The skin graft was okay. Everything was happy, but I had to wear that prosthesis that looked like a dildo 24/7, and I had to wear it for a few months. So when I was going to university, I was wearing it 24/7. When I was going to my nursing placements, I was wearing it 24/7. And looking back, it seems incredible to me how I was able to do that, because my colleagues weren't going through it. They were just having their normal lives, and I had this thing inside me. Every time I go to the toilet, I need to remove it so I can pee, and then I need to clean it with aseptic cleaning fluids, and then I need to put it back in again. I need to wear very tight underwear and very tight trousers so it doesn't come out, and it's just, the whole thing was a bit bizarre. But I think when we find incredible circumstances in our lives, we almost find incredible strength to deal with those circumstances. And so I just did what I had to do, basically. So over time, I started wearing that prosthesis just overnight, and then over the weekends, and then I didn't have to wear it anymore. So the whole process, I would say, took almost a year. And I would say that once that side of things was resolved, that's when my emotional health started taking a hit, because I've started realizing that I had resolved what could be resolved, but there was something that I will never be able to resolve, which is my inability to have babies. And after a year, that's when it finally hit me. And I didn't know how I was going to cope with it. I honestly didn't. And it seemed so difficult for me to comprehend, to grieve the babies that I had never had. I didn't know how to do it. I don't think there is a formula. I don't think there is a how-to guide on how to do that. I was completely lost. But at the time, I already had some friends who were going through the same. Because I've been on TV in Portugal, and so I've met lots of girls from all over Portugal who were going through the same. So we were meeting for coffees and going out, and we were supporting each other. So that was really good. I think because we didn't have social media back then, that just made it so special. And today that we have social media, it just makes it even better that there's so many ways that we can connect with people. But at that point, I remember sitting in my bed. I was so desperate. And I asked myself, why me? Why is this happening to me? I don't know what to do. I was just so lost. And I remember that my dad, he kept saying, it's not up to us to ask why. One day we will understand. He kept saying it. It's not up to us to ask why. One day we will understand. And I completely trust my parents. And if they are telling me that one day I will understand, then I believe it. One day I will understand. So I remember very vividly a very spiritual moment I had where I was in my bed crying, and I felt this light, this strength inside of me. And in that moment, I've made one decision, and I decided that if I could cope with infertility, there was nothing in my life that I would not be able to achieve. And that was a statement. It was not like, I hope I'm gonna cope with this, or I want to cope with this. I was committed, I was resolved in that moment. I said, this is happening, because there is no life if this doesn't happen. So this is happening, and I'm taking back control. I'm not going to go to university, marry, buy a house, have babies because other people want me to, because that's what everyone does. I'm going to do whatever I want to do with my life, whatever brings me happiness in my life. That's what I'm going to do. And I'm going to be happy. I'm going to cope. And at that moment, I didn't know how. I didn't have a map or strategies. I didn't have anything. But I was committed to doing it. And when I look back so many years now, I've noticed that it was a decision that I had to make every day of my life, because some days are more difficult than others. And there are triggers. I think even when you think you're okay, there's times when something will happen and there will be a trigger. So the decision of being okay, no matter what, was one that I have to make, even up to today, day in, day in, day again. And infertility is like a wound to me that can get better, but never heals. So there are certain things that will make it worse, certain things that will make it better. And every day I just need to choose the things that will make it better and learn how to cope with the things that make it worse. So that decision that I made, very spiritual decision of, if I can cope with this, there is nothing that I won't be able to achieve, has shaped my whole life. I cannot even begin to tell you how that decision ended up defining everything that I do. Because I dedicated myself so much to work, and whenever there's a challenge or a project, I always feel that it is possible. Why is it not possible? Everything is possible and everything is easy, because nothing is as difficult as infertility. If I can cope with that, bring me anything. Masters, PhDs, a company, 5 companies, I don't care. A difficult project in a small timeline, I don't care. Everything is possible. That is what I had in my brain. Nothing that I couldn't achieve. So that ended up being my driving force for everything that I do. But personally, I almost felt that I was in that maybe denial stage of the process of grief, because personally I was dating men who either didn't want children, because that would be so comfortable to me, because I don't have to face my wounds. If they don't want children already, it's not my fault. And I would say that didn't work, and I think several reasons in life why relationships don't work, but I saw myself 15 years after a diagnosis being single and looking back, and I felt I'm so accomplished as a nurse. I have so many things, everything that I thought I wanted in life. And ultimately, emotionally, I was well, but I hadn't made something with my diagnosis. And that's when I decided to change my career completely 4 years ago. And I said, I need to use the skills that I gained throughout these last 15 years of coping with this challenge and give it back to other people. Number one, because people who are diagnosed in their 30s, they don't have 15 years to try I cope with. How can I imagine about my reproductive future? You just don't have the time. So if I can give other people those tools, then that can be so powerful. And secondly, because I want to give some meaning to my own journey. I don't think things happen by chance. I think everything has a meaning, and because if I just couldn't have babies and that's that and there's no meaning to that, how sad is that? I think everything has a meaning. So if I could give meaning to my journey of infertility by helping others, then it's not so bad. Then I'm not so unfulfilled. Then it's okay not to have babies, because I'm helping so many other people have babies. So that was my big aha moment 4 years ago, when I said, whoa, it's taken me so long. I don't want to beat myself up for taking so long, but I remember when I realized that I had this sort of mission to help myself by growing beyond the wound of infertility by helping others, I almost felt apologized to God and to the universe for not having realized it sooner, for being afraid of touching my own wound and talking about it every day, helping other people. Anyway, so that has started my whole journey of doing what I do today, and it also opened up my heart to meet my husband, because it's only when I'm okay in my own skin, when I've resolved all the emotional issues that were left with infertility and this difficult diagnosis, that I felt then it's okay to bring into my life someone who will take me as I am. It's not that I will feel less of because I can't give him children. I just can't explain it. I just think it comes from a point of self-love, self-acceptance, and finally being okay to loving myself for who I am and allowing others, or allowing myself to find someone who is in the wavelength who can love me for me. So I think that would be, long story short, that would be my story over the last 20 years. And I would say where I am right now is we're not trying to conceive. I'm mindful that we could do surrogacy, we could adopt, we could do all the different suggestions that people give so many of us, and I know it upsets so many people. We could do all of those things, but we've decided not to do any of them for now. I don't know if we ever will. I've realized that none of those things are band-aids for the wound of infertility. It's not because we can do surrogacy, it's not because we can adopt that we will ever be able to cure this wound. So I think we need to be 100% okay with not having children the normal, natural way before we embrace other opportunities. So we need to be okay with not having children naturally to consider IVF or to consider surrogacy or to consider adoption. So I think that is where we are right now. I don't know if we will ever change our minds, but we are at peace with where we are, and I absolutely love our life, and helping so many people brings me so much joy, so much fulfillment that I wouldn't do it any other way. So that's where I am. And I'm really excited to be here today talking to all of you during Fertility Awareness Week. I have so many interesting things coming up. I'm launching an app on Monday, and this is like my, what I would call almost masterpiece, where I'm making lots of fertility education tools available to everyone for free, just because I want to combine my experience as a patient with my knowledge as a nurse, and I feel that everyone should have access to fertility education that is trustworthy. So it's free for everyone. It's coming on Monday, and I'm really excited about it. I'll tell you more about it in an Insta Live on Friday, but if you want to stay connected, you can join us in our launch masterclass. All you need to do is go to the link in bio, and the masterclass is on Monday. And I'm really, really excited to have you with us. Thank you so much for staying connected. If you want to get in touch, you can send me a message. I always respond to my messages. And have a great day. Beautiful souls.